Hello and welcome to India's World. The second round of the French presidential poll is on May 7th. In the first round, the far-right candidate Marine Le Pen and central-left candidate Emmanuel Macron have come out on top. The top two spots have gone to protest candidates as they are both critical of traditional elites, even though from different perspectives. They are being called outsiders, although Macron is France's former economy minister and Le Pen is a current member of European Parliament. This is the first time that the two mainstream parties, the Socialist Party and the Republican Party, are out of the presidential race. The road ahead for the next French president is likely to be tough, given the French electorate's skepticism about its political leadership, worries about unemployment, the effect of globalization on the country's economy and identity, and their attitude to Europe. The French presidential election is on May 7th. It is not a referendum on the European Union. However, its outcome will have a serious implication for the future of EU. Le Pen's position is anti-European Union. Macron is an ardent pro-European. As of now, opinion polls show that Macron is ahead of Le Pen for the final round. To discuss what is at stake in the French presidential election and how its results may shape Europe and the world, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Kanwal Sibal. He is a former Foreign Secretary of India and was India's ambassador to Turkey, Egypt, Russia and France. We have Ambassador Rakesh Sood. He has been India's ambassador to Nepal, Afghanistan and France. And we have with us Ambassador Dinkar Khullar. He was India's ambassador to Azerbaijan, Austria, Belgium, Luxembourg and the European Union. I welcome you gentlemen to this discussion. Ambassador Sibal, let me begin with you. Some people are saying that the Macron versus Le Pen face-off was not the best result for France, but it wasn't the worst either. Do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I agree that it was not the best result. I would have thought that Fillon, the Republican candidate, should have won in the first round and would have been a very good French president, very balanced, sober, and devoted to settling the outstanding issues in Europe, both within the European Union, but also with Russia, which is very important because a lot of European politics has got distorted because of Russia, US, European tensions. But he was hounded out. There was a smear campaign against him. And if he had been in the first round, he would have definitely become the president of France. When you say it is not the worst possible outcome, well, I don't know, views may be different on this because, as you rightly said, the mainstream parties are not there. So it's a choice between a candidate who doesn't have any party behind him, who's totally inexperienced, he's very young, and the center-left coalition that he's trying to forge is not a given because he'll have very difficult relationship with the parliament because he doesn't have a party. And of course, Le Pen is, as you said, a right-wing candidate, and she has positions which will could lead to Brexit and France outside the euro, and would turn the politics of France upside down. Relationship with Germany will become extremely difficult to manage. I think either way, it's not a good augury for the future. And I again say that if Fillon had won, that would have been the best outcome for France.
Rakesh, does this result simplify the second round choice for French voters? Because had there been a face-off between the left candidate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, and Le Pen, would the moderates then have been faced with the devil's choice, giving Le Pen the best chance at presidency?
Well, one thing that we have to remember is that it is not like 2002 when Marine Le Pen's father made it to the second round. Yeah. But there, all the traditional parties came together, horrified that somebody like Jean-Marie Le Pen could actually be the president. And then he was roundly trounced in the second round. What Marine Le Pen has done is that she has transformed the party. So in a sense, in the second round, she is trying to poach some of Fillon's, Fillon got about 20% in the first round. So she is trying to poach some of Fillon's support base as well. And she is hoping to mobilize her own support base so that it turns out in large numbers. And so the choice may not be as much of a given, as easy as it seems. And if, although it's early days, but we saw that the lead between the two, which was initially projected at 60-40, is seen to be narrowing. So it may end up being a closer race. For Macron, of course, he doesn't have a party. I mean, he has a fledglingly new party. And therefore, he doesn't have that kind of structure. So he has to pitch his appeal at a different level where he shows himself as centrist, but his economic policies are liberal policies and his international policy is also a liberal policy. So in that sense, he has to combine, he in a sense is trying to expand the centrist vote bank, as it were, both center-left and center-right.
Okay. Dinkar, to what extent does this election reveal a fragmented electorate in France? If you take the 4 leading candidates, they've all garnered between 19 to 24% votes. And if you do a breakdown of the vote, then you find that the proponents of globalization and the opponents of it are equally divided.
Yes, indeed, that is the case. But they have this system of a second round, and it's not first past the post in the first round. It reveals a great fragmentation, particularly as you mentioned on the international aspects or the European aspects. Curiously enough, the far right and the far left seem to be in agreement on what to do with the EU, that they're anti-EU. So there's a sizable majority which has sizable vote that has gone in favor of the anti-EU. For different reasons, they voted for different parties on the right or the left. But the fragmentation of vote now will determine where the center-left and center-right go in the next round.
One quick question to you before we wrap up this segment. What was the impact, if any, of the terrorist attack on Champs-Élysées just 3 days before the election? Did it distort the vote in any significant manner? Do you think Marine Le Pen would have come third rather than being elevated to second position?
On the contrary, actually speaking, the impression that a lot of people had was that Marine Le Pen would do much better in the first round that she has done, even 30% plus, because the assumption was that the people are fed up with the manner in which the Holland government has been dealing with the issues of terrorism and religious extremism, and that these repeated terrorist attacks were moving the electorate towards Le Pen. So it's a bit of a surprise that actually her score is much lower than was expected. If she had got 30% plus, then I think the race would have been very, very close. I don't think she would have still won, but it would have been very close. But as of now, my own guess is it will not be very close, and then Macron will win.
Okay, all right. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back in a bit. Stay with us. Don't go away. Welcome back. We're discussing the impending French presidential election and its likely impact on France and on Europe. You wanted to add something?
I just wanted to add that Macron was the economy minister of Hollande for less than 2 years. And Hollande has become extremely unpopular. And while he was the economy minister, he took decisions which people remember. So there's this feeling that Macron will be Hollande, the continuation of Hollande's policies. And that will go against him. So he'll have to do a lot of work to convince the public that actually it's not once again kind of Hollande's policy that will continue. So that's a problem. So that is why people are a bit unsure about what may happen in the ultimate analysis. But Marine Le Pen means the destruction of the European project, which the French will not accept.
We're going to discuss that in a bit. Rakesh, despite her attempts to modernize and detoxify her party, Marine Le Pen's percentage of votes was 2 or 3 percentage points more than her father's in 2002. But if you look at the absolute number of votes, she got 3 million more votes than her father got in 2002. So do you think her performance suggests that National Front's ideas are gaining traction in France, that the party is no longer an untouchable?
That I think is certainly a fact, that she has been successful in rebranding her party. In a sense, moving it away from the pro-Nazi, anti-Semitic image, and she has succeeded in mainstreaming her party to a fair extent. Also the issues, unemployment, migration, terrorism. I would say 3 main issues which have dominated the pre-election debates and discussions. In all these 3 issues, she has been able to present some kind of a nationalist, conservative, statist kind of an image, bringing pride back to France, that sort of a message, which has helped her in her rebranding exercise.
Dinkar, what Ambassador Sibal was saying, that Macron has presented himself as both modern and at the same time an anti-establishment candidate. Now, could there be a danger that with all the endorsements from the traditionalists that are coming to Macron, including President Hollande supporting him now, because of that he stands to lose his USP, or do you think that he will actually gain by the traditionalists supporting him in the second round?
Well, in terms of winning an election, naturally he will gain. But in terms of his long-term image, he's going to have a problem in any case, because if he wants to make changes that he's talked about in either the economy or the European project, he needs to have Parliament with him. The Parliament is not likely to be any less fragmented, and the traditional parties are likely to secure sizable votes there. He has to carry the Parliament with him to make any radical changes. So in any case, his unique selling plan, whatever it might be, is going to get affected one way or the other.
How would, sorry.
I just wanted to say, I think the biggest challenge for Emmanuel Macron is that he is projecting himself as an agent of change, and yet at the same time, he is very much part of the establishment. I mean, he has graduated from the École Nationale d'Administration, which is where the elite French civil servants and business leaders come from. He has been to one of the best schools in Paris. So, in a sense, he's a product of the establishment, projecting himself as an agent of change, drawing upon a center-left and a center-right vote. I mean, these three things are very difficult to synthesize together.
So how would he synthesize them when people say that his victory could presage a restructuring of French politics? Do you think French politics would be restructured if Macron wins?
I don't think so. How will you found a new party? I can't see that happening, because it's a movement. Actually, it's not a strict parallel, but it's like the AAP. You know, you suddenly emerge because the surrounding circumstances are such that you have an opening, and you emerge and you want to give a new lead in politics. But the Socialist Party is not going to go away. The extreme left, represented by Mélenchon, was always there. The Socialist Party always has that mainstream socialist and the more extreme socialist. And on the right, you have the Republican Party, which is a reincarnation of the original Gaullist party, but has undergone transformation. So the right wing is there. And on the whole, of course, in France, if you look at the electoral structure, the right-wing parties have a majority. So that thing is not going to be restructured. The politics will remain fragmented. And in fact, France has entered into a very, very difficult phase. And they're going to have a lot of difficulties ahead with this election.
Rakesh, the Socialists and the Republicans, can they improve their performance in the upcoming legislative election, parliamentary election in June?
They, in any case, dominate the parliament. The parliament is 577 members, and I think, as Ambassador Sibal very rightly said, we'll have to see whether En Marche, which is Macron's newly created party, whether it is a movement or a party. Now, if it is a movement, then clearly the parliament will continue to remain dominated by the socialists and the Republicans. Because even Marine Le Pen, for all her 21% vote, actually has just 2 members in the House out of 577.
Dinkar, so could Macron become the first president of France who doesn't have a formal party to back him?
It appears to be that, unless, as Ambassador Sood mentioned, that he can convert a movement into a party. But that will take time, I think. But there are maybe merits in this, that if you want to break from the traditional mold, you are not backed by a party. But as I have already said, it will pose great problems for him in Parliament. But
you see, France has always had a problem whenever there has been cohabitation, which means the president is from one party, the prime minister is from another party. Here it will, in a sense, be even more difficult, because the president will not belong to any party, and the parliament will be dominated by traditional parties. So how are they going to work together and have a program of action and deal with all the serious problems on the ground: unemployment, terrorism, migration, the European Union, the euro, and everything else? There is, after all, strong backing for Marine Le Pen, even if she doesn't become president, but some of her ideas are accepted by the general public. Yep. So how will Macron accommodate those ideas in governance? It's a very difficult situation. But I suppose the world is in turmoil, and the United States is in a peculiar situation, so is Europe.
Rakesh, so there seems to be a real possibility that Emmanuel Macron would become a lame duck president without a majority in National Assembly once the parliamentary elections are held?
Not necessarily. I think we'll have to see how the European project delivers. And in this, the German elections that are going to come up in September are going to be hugely critical. So what we have to see is that if Germany is on track and France is on track, then the European project, and I think you have to sort of deal with it from that point of view. Then, of course, you have the relationship. EU has to negotiate Brexit talks. There is the relationship with Russia, which is critical, and the relationship with an unpredictable United States. So all of this will, I think, will give him enough, will give the Macron enough to play with, provided he can maintain his messaging and, as I said, not rely on party structures. So in a sense, it will be a new experience, but he doesn't have to be a completely lame duck from day one.
But he's very liberal. His ideas around Muslims and integration and migration and all that are precisely the ones which, from which large segment of the French population is alienated. He's a bit like our fundamentalist secularists. You know, he's going to have difficulty.
Being a liberal in France has become bad suddenly? I mean, I'm surprised.
No,
but we need to take a break at this point. We need to take a break at this point. We'll be back in a bit. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're discussing the impending French presidential election and its implications. Dinkar, Macron has pledged that half the candidates of his En Marche party will be people with no political experience. He's out of 577, 50% that he will field will have no political experience. And he also hopes that other half of En Marche candidates would be sitting MPs, either from the ruling socialists or from the opposition Republicans. Now, this is a daring plan. Do you think he'll succeed in this plan?
No, I don't think so. I don't think this is likely to be successful, which is precisely why I think the panelists have been mentioning that the parliament is still likely to be dominated by the traditional parties.
But socialists and Republicans have said that they will put up their own candidates. They're not going to join En Marche.
But then, you know, let's first understand the Elysee or the presidency is much more powerful than the post of the Prime Minister. So while the Assembly and the Prime Minister has an ability to block certain things in terms of legislation, in terms of executive authority, the presidency has fair bit of leeway, much more than, let's say, in other places which would have both a president and a prime minister. So, depending on what happens, you will find that factions within the mainstream political parties, namely the socialists and the Republicans, factions within them will end up supporting certain policies, and it's a question of how well he manages the Elysee, which will drive, which has traditionally driven French policy. The French policy has always been driven by a president and not by the prime minister.
Is this true even of cohabitation? When you have a powerful prime minister backed by parliament, doesn't the presidency become more ceremonial? Don't its powers become less?
No. But Chirac had that issue with Jospin, the socialist prime minister. But the French presidency, in fact, is in control of the foreign policy very largely. And then he has a position in the Elysee, and is which allows him to pursue his agenda, but not so much the domestic agenda and the economic agenda, but foreign policy. Yes, he has very considerable powers. You know, but the reason why the socialist candidate has performed very poorly is because he said that the Socialist Party has betrayed him, because many elements in the Socialist Party have backed Macron. So to that extent, Rakesh is right, that he will be able to muster some support in the parliament from the socialists. But and the traditional centrists, they've not been very strong, but they have been a fairly permanent feature of French politics, and they have waxed and waned. Sometimes they have done better, sometimes worse. So those people will also back him. So he'll be able to work it out. It's not as if France is going to collapse, but it will be a difficult and a weak presidency.
You agree with him? It will be a weak presidency if president has the kind of powers you are suggesting he has. Then how does it matter to him even if he doesn't control parliament? It's only a question of running roughshod over them at worst, or at best, you know, sort of compromising with them and still pushing forward his agenda.
I think on the domestic agenda, he does need the parliament, and particularly knowing his liberal tilt in regard to the economy, if he's to make major economic reforms and changes, that will require the support of the legislature. Foreign policy is, of course, a different area. But that being the case, if he is going to address issues of public debt, of unemployment, with major liberal economic reforms, without considerable support in the parliament, he is going to find it difficult.
What would his position on immigration be? Because that's a issue that agitates the French people, whether the political leadership likes it or not.
No, he has said very categorically that he is not in favor of banning immigration. And however, one of the proposals that he has put forward is to set up a European border force. So he would like, in a sense, some kind of controls. Germany allowed in a lot of refugees coming in from Syria via Turkey. And I think so what he's talking about is a more Europe-wide approach to migration rather than an exclusively French approach which would put up walls around France.
Okay. Now I want to ask you, we've been discussing Macron as if he has won already. He may not win. So if Marine Le Pen wins, doesn't she face the same problems with Parliament because the National Front has little chance of winning a parliamentary majority?
I think whatever one may think about Marine Le Pen, and Rakesh is right that she has made the party more moderate. She has broken up with her father. The father, in fact, has criticized her very strongly, yes, saying that she should have actually done an electoral campaign like Trump did, very aggressive, very clear on some basic points, and etc., etc. But Marine Le Pen, in any case, is a very hypothetical connection. My conviction is that she will not win. But assuming if she does, I think France will be in for extremely difficult times because she will not have a parliamentary majority. Her ideas are not accepted by a large section of the French electorate, and some of her ideas of taking France out of the euro and having a referendum on continuation of continuing being a member of the European Union. And of course, she's very anti-German in her statements. In fact, she says that France has become a handmaiden to Germany and Hollande was just some kind of a adjunct to Merkel and all that. This will totally disrupt European politics because France and Germany are the founders of modern day Europe, of the European Union. And if Marine Le Pen has these ideas, and this may be, the French electorate in part may be responsive to these ideas, but at the European level, I think one can easily say that this will be disastrous.
But ultimately the French are going to vote, not the Europeans. And her idea of EU, Rakesh, is at one level she says she's anti-EU, but she's also talked of EU being a much looser agreement where people have control over their borders and over their economies. Right. They can protect their economy from foreign competition.
The traditional approach in Brussels to challenges that EU members have faced has been more Europe is better. So in a sense, the closer you bring things, the best way to solve a problem, even though it means that you achieve a consensus which is less than optimal, but that is also some progress because some unity is better than divided unity. And I think what she is doing
is... But why call it divided unity? Why not devolution?
Devolution, okay. That's a better word. Her approach is that less Europe is a solution, which means you are shifting gears completely, and that is her approach. So she begins by saying that she will take France out of the Eurozone, which means that, but she doesn't say that we will completely reject. So she is talking of going back to something called the European monetary, the snake and things like that. Similarly, in other things, she wants to get more power to sovereign states rather than less power. So that is the fundamental shift that she is presenting.
Okay, we are running out of time. So a quick answer from all of you, one sentence answer. What could go wrong for Macron between now and the 7th?
I don't think much is likely to go wrong for him.
Well, a major terrorist strike, I think, could probably, if it depends on first how close they come together, and if they are coming close and then there is a major terrorist strike, then I think it could tilt a lot of voters.
A lot of people are very skeptical that Macron will make it to where he has been able to come because they thought that this bubble will burst because he had no program, really speaking. And people generally thought that his bluff will be called, but he's done well. He's first in the first round. But I agree, if it's a very, very major terrorist strike, things may change, but that will still not be enough to change the minds of the larger electorate to give Marine Le Pen the victory. So Macron will win, Whether it's fortunate or unfortunate of France is for the French people to decide and judge.
Well, on that note, I'd like to thank all of you, Ambassadors Dinkar, Khullar, Rakesh, Sood and Kanwal, Sibal, for participating in this discussion. That is all we have for you today. We'll be back again as usual next week. Until then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's World.